Toyana Gunishish Hawa. My name is Christina Love. I'm an Igigik tribal member from the Bristol Bay region where my family has lived for 10,000 plus years. I currently reside on Datsakahini, Linkarani, home to the Akantakukwan of the Linkit Nation, also known as Juneau, Alaska. I work with a number of different tribal leaders from Alaska that are working on innovative organizational design, education, and integration. So in Alaska, we have all the same challenges that the rest of the United States has, and then some. We have communities that don't have access to 911. We lack basic infrastructure. We have an abundance of racism and isolation and weather difficulties. So even when 911 is able to get out to some of our rural villages, it can take weeks. And we have tribal leaders that have told us horrific stories about law enforcement officers who will respond to a moose being killed out of season, but then wait 2 weeks to respond to a woman being murdered. So it's all of these different issues so that we have come together, whether we're talking about domestic violence, sexual assault, substance use, mental health, suicide from youth to elders, alcohol-related deaths, trafficking, homelessness, all of those things we have connected back to the same issue of colonization and genocide, and then connecting back to our roots. So not only are we holding both the absolute honesty and the devastation of what's happened to Indigenous people, but also holding the full story of how we got here and challenging some of the myths about who people say that we are, despite all of these challenges, with the biggest focus being on healing. So we ask the questions like, why are we harmed at higher rates? Why are women, where our two-spirit relatives, why are Black and brown people harmed at higher rates? And how do we heal? How do we heal as individuals, as families, as organizations and communities? And looking at different structures for organizations outside of hierarchies, shared leadership, matriarchy versus patriarchy, ensuring that our children and youth and men, that we can say that not only is there healing for people who have experienced harm, but there's also healing for people who have done harm, and that has and doing it all without shame, whether that is an organization that's engaging in lateral violence, or a man who's spending the rest of their life in prison for committing some of the most heinous crimes, but meeting our communities where they are, making sure that no one is left behind, and that everyone is a part of the solution. I would say one of the most important parts of the work that we've been doing is acknowledging that people will know healing by the way that it feels, and then giving them all these different pathways to say that even if you are somebody who is engaging in harmful behaviors and patterns, and this includes education. Some of the biggest propaganda we know is learned, just like violence is learned, and giving people pathways and ways that they can substitute, or teaching people how to think. Where did you learn this, and who benefits from this, or who's harmed by this, and really putting education in this deeply liberating way. That that education is liberation, whether we're talking about the science of addiction, or why you can't feed your kids, or why you can't house your kids, while also ensuring that they have the thing that they need, whether that's food or housing or safety. Okay. For a long time, we've known that people who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution, but furthest from resources, money, and power. So we're talking about paradigm shift. We and looking at survivors more than storytellers, that there is a full continuum that survivors can engage in, from advisory to leadership. Not only can we tell a good story, but we can also lead an agency, and we have so many brilliant ideas. So ensuring that survivors have access to the training and the professional development and the education and the resources that we need to fully be well, so that we can engage. When we think about how much energy is spent on just being okay, on just surviving, and how there isn't a linear. I know that some people would say, you can't be in this work until you're 2 years violence free. I've heard that quite a bit. We don't hire survivors unless they are 5 years from services. And these are some of the most ridiculous things, because I've never been able to escape violence, never, and And it has been incredibly important that no one has left me out, or that I think about that I am 13 years in recovery, and the way that I talk about things now is so different. And for people who are still in it or who are freshly coming out of it, they have more information that we need. So engaging survivors throughout the continuum of the lifespan, from being in it to being on the other side of it, to 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, and seeing the value in all that. And then the other thing I think is really important to understand is meaningful engagement, that there is a way to do this that does center healing. Healing is in everything that we do, and it's the subtlety. It could be one word versus the other, or the shift in a text message or an email, but it's all deeply relational, and asking that to be the center of it, that it isn't transactional, that it is transformative, and, and there's a lot of skill set to that. It is something that that can be trained, it's something that can be learned, but ensuring that not only are we bringing survivors in, but we're doing the prep work, the before, the during, and the after, to ensure that that engagement does not cause more harm. And then on the other side of that, not only do we not want to cause more harm, but that it carries the potential to be deeply healing, and then we talk about how to do that.